A blind radio host fell in love with a caller before knowing who she was. The rain hammers against the glass of the 22nd floor. It is a relentless Seattle storm. Inside the K-Night radio studio, the lights are completely off. Silas prefers the dark. The scent of stale tobacco and bitter black coffee hangs heavy in the chilled air. His fingers glide over the audio console. He reads the braille labels with practiced ease. He adjusts his headset. "You are listening to Midnight Echoes," Silas says. His voice is a low, soothing baritone. "I am Silas. The city is asleep, but I know you are not. Call in. Share your ghosts with me. Most nights, it is just lonely souls complaining about the weather, but tonight, line 4 blinks. Silas slides the fader up. You are on the air. Speak to me." There is no immediate answer. Silas hears only the sound of breathing. It is slow. It is completely measured. "Hello, Silas." The voice is female. It is incredibly calm, yet sharp enough to cut glass. "Do you ever wonder, Silas," the woman says. She does not rush her words. "Do you ever wonder if the color of pain looks exactly like the pitch black your eyes are staring into right now?" Silas freezes. His hand hovers over the disconnect button. His heart hammers fiercely against his ribs. The sudden spike in his pulse thuds loudly in his ears. His producer usually tells him to cut these harsh calls. But Silas does not press the button. He is drawn to the cruel poetry of her question. He leans closer to the microphone. The leather chair creaks beneath his weight. "Who is this?" Silas asks. "Does a name matter?" She replies. "Answer the question. What does your darkness feel like?" Silas takes a deep breath. He focuses entirely on the audio feed. He listens to the subtle textures hidden in her voice. "I do not see black," Silas answers. His tone is perfectly steady. "I see frequencies. Every sound has a texture. Every vibration has a distinct shape. And your voice." Silas continues, his voice dropping down to a raspy whisper. "It is not black at all. What is it then?" she asks. Her icy composure cracks just a fraction. It has the deep blue color of the ocean, right before a massive storm hits the surface. Absolute silence falls over the telephone line. Outside, thunder rumbles across the dark Seattle skyline. Inside, Silas waits. He can hear the raw tension in her breathing. "You think you can see me?" she finally whispers. "I hear you," Silas corrects her. "You are hurting, and you want someone to hurt with you. Why me?" "Because you understand what it means to lose the light," she says. Before Silas can reply, the line goes dead. The empty dial tone buzzes loudly in his ears. Silas remains perfectly still in the dark room. He does not reach for the console to take the next caller. The rain outside rages on, but the true storm has just begun. The clock strikes 2 in the morning. Tuesday, then Thursday, then Saturday. The K-Night radio studio becomes a solitary sanctuary. Silas sits in the oppressive darkness, listening to the static. He does not care about the other callers. He only waits for line 4 to blink. Waiting for her voice has become a consuming addiction. Tonight, the rain washes violently over Seattle. The digital clock ticks forward. 2:15. Line 4 flashes red. Silas pushes the fader up instantly. He does not even state the name of the show. "You are late," Silas says. His voice is a low rumble in the quiet room. "I was listening to the city," Lyra replies. Her voice remains perfectly calm, a chilling contrast to the storm outside the glass. "The city sounds lonely tonight. How do you see the world, Lyra?" Silas asks. He uses the name she surrendered to him 2 nights ago. "I do not see it," she murmurs. "I feel it. I feel the heavy weight of the air before it rains. I feel the rough texture of grief when strangers walk past me. Sight is a terrible distraction, Silas. It blinds people to the absolute truth." Silas leans closer to the microphone. His leather chair creaks loudly. "I lost my sight 3 years ago," Silas says. The words feel heavy on his tongue. He never talks about this on the air. It was not a gradual fade. It was violently stolen from me. "Tell me," she whispers. It is a gentle command, disguised as a plea. A car crash on Interstate Num. Silas continues. His chest tightens painfully. I remember the terrifying screech of the tires, the shattering of glass, and then absolute nothingness. The darkness took my eyes instantly. He pauses. His throat feels entirely dry. But the darkness did not just take my eyes, Silas says softly. It took Sarah, your fiancée, Lyra says. It is not a question. It is a cold statement of fact. Silas grips the audio console tightly. She died before the ambulance arrived. I was trapped inside the twisted metal, holding her cold hand. I could not even see her face one last time. The radio line falls completely silent. Silas breathes heavily into the microphone. He feels incredibly exposed, completely stripped of his professional armor. Then, the silence shifts. Lyra does not offer meaningless pity. She does not offer hollow apologies. Instead, she begins to hum. It is a low, haunting melody. The notes rise and fall with a fragile, beautiful rhythm. Silas freezes completely. The breath leaves his lungs in a sudden, violent rush. He knows this exact melody. Every single note is burned permanently into his broken heart. His hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. They frantically sweep across the Braille soundboard. He knocks over his coffee mug. The dark liquid spills rapidly across the floor. He desperately searches for the emergency record button. He presses the button down hard. Stop, Silas gasps. His voice breaks completely. Lyra continues to hum. The melody is flawless. The pitch is terrifyingly perfect. Where did you hear that? Silas demands. His loud voice echoes violently in the small studio. She hums the final. Descending chord. Lyra, answer me, Silas shouts. The calm radio host is entirely gone. Only a desperate, broken man remains. It is a very beautiful song, Silas, she says softly. That is, Lost in Seattle. Silas says, his voice shaking violently with pure terror. Sarah wrote that song. She wrote it only for me. She never recorded it. She never played it for anyone else. He stands up abruptly. His chair crashes backward into the soundproof wall. How do you have that melody? Silas screams into the microphone. That is not just music. That is Sarah's soul. A soft, hollow laugh travels through the telephone line. Some souls never truly leave the highway, Silas, she whispers. The line clicks sharply. The call disconnects. The loud buzz of the dial tone floods the studio. Silas stands alone in the pitch-black room, trembling violently. The melody followed him home. The rain has stopped, but the Capitol Hill apartment remains perfectly cold. Silas sits in his armchair by the massive window. He cannot see the Seattle skyline. He only hears it, the distant wail of a police siren, the low rumble of a late-night delivery truck, the rhythmic dripping of water from the rusted fire escape. He lives strictly by routine. The leather armchair is exactly 5 steps from the kitchen counter. The vintage record player is exactly 3 steps to the left. His entire world is meticulously measured in precise footsteps and familiar echoes. His private cell phone rings. It is not the studio broadcast line. Very few people possess this number. Silas reaches out. His long fingers find the cold glass of the screen. Hello, Silas says. I am painting the ocean, Lyra replies. Silas exhales slowly. He sinks deeper into the leather armchair. He does not ask how she acquired his private number. He no longer cares about the professional boundaries of reality. What does the ocean look like tonight? Silas asks. His voice is a low, intimate whisper in the empty room. It is fading, Lyra says. Her voice is completely stripped of the surgical chill from the radio show. It sounds incredibly fragile. The blue is turning into ash gray. The sharp edges of the canvas are bleeding into the dark. You are a painter, Silas notes. I was a painter. Lyra corrects him. Silas can hear the subtle, terrifying tremor in her breath. It is macular degeneration. The doctors say it is highly aggressive. The center of my vision is already a massive black hole. It is slowly swallowing the rest of the world. Soon, everything will be completely gone. Silas feels a sudden, sharp ache in his chest. He is listening to someone slowly drowning in the exact same darkness that consumed him 3 years ago. I am terrified, Silas, Lyra whispers. The confession is raw and completely unedited. I sit in my art studio for hours. I desperately try to memorize the exact shade of yellow in a dying sunflower, but my brain is already forgetting the light. You do not forget, Silas says gently. The colors just move inward. You stop seeing them with your failing eyes. You start feeling them in your hands. Silas closes his sightless eyes. He begins to build an image of her in his mind. He visualizes her standing in a cold studio, smelling of heavy oil paint and sharp turpentine. He imagines her delicate hands covered in dried pigments, reaching out blindly into the empty space. Close your eyes, Lyra, Silas commands softly. Do it right now. He waits. He hears the faint rustle of her clothing over the line. They are closed, Lyra says. Now touch the wet canvas, Silas instructs. Do not look for the blue color. Feel the thick texture of the paint. The ocean is not just a visual. It is the heavy, cold weight against your fingertips. You must become the storm, Lyra. A soft sob escapes her lips. It travels through the cellular tower and pierces directly into his chest. Silas feels an overwhelming, desperate need to protect this broken woman. I do not want to be alone in the dark, Lyra cries softly. You are not alone, Silas promises. His grip tightens fiercely on the phone. I am already here. Silas, Lyra whispers. We are two people standing on opposite edges of the void, holding hands across a fragile telephone wire. Do not let go of me. I will never let go, Silas vows. He sits in the silence, entirely consumed by her beautiful velvet lies. But promises made over a phone line eventually crave the weight of a physical presence. They needed a place where the darkness could finally meet. The blind monk sits quietly on a dark corner of Pioneer Square. Silas waits alone at a small table, his folded white cane resting against the edge. He is 20 minutes early. Lyra agreed to meet under one absolute condition. You must not touch me, she had warned. If you reach for me, I will leave, Silas promised. Now, he waits in the suffocating darkness, tracking the hiss of the espresso machine and the rhythmic drumming of rain against the glass. His pulse beats heavily. He is terrified, yet exhilarated. The brass wind chime above the entrance rings sharply. A gust of cold Seattle wind sweeps in. Silas tilts his head, detecting the distinct sound of leather boots stepping onto the floorboards. The footsteps are hesitant. They pause, then move slowly toward his table. Then, the scent hits him. It paralyzes his lungs. The air does not smell like oil paint or turpentine. It is Chanel No. 5. Mixed with the metallic scent of cold rain and a trace of vanilla, it is an impossible combination. It is the exact fragrance Sarah wore the night she died. The chair opposite Silas scrapes softly. Someone sits down. The air feels dense, charged with electricity. Silas hears her rapid, shallow breathing like a terrified animal caught in a trap. Lyra, Silas whispers, his voice shaking. There is no answer, only a ragged exhale. The scent is overwhelming, suffocating him with horrific memories of crushed metal and shattered glass. You smell exactly like her, Silas says, his chest heaving. Forgetting his promise, he reaches a trembling hand across the table. He desperately needs to feel her face, to know if his broken mind is playing a cruel game. He hears the sharp rustle of a winter coat as she recoils. Instead of her skin, Silas feels something dry and fragile pressed into his palm. He traces it with his fingertips, a dried rose. As he closes his hand, the brittle petals crumble into dust. The chair scrapes violently backward. Wait, Silas pleads. He hears her boots rushing toward the exit. The wind chime clatters wildly. She is gone. Silas lunges forward without his cane, navigating by blind instinct. His knee crashes into an iron chair, and he falls hard onto the floor. Ignoring the barista's shout, he scrambles to his feet, bursting through the door onto the wet pavement. The freezing rain instantly soaks him. He spins in the total darkness, hunting for her footsteps. There is nothing but the deafening roar of the storm. Silas drops heavily to his knees on the wet concrete, crushing the rose dust in his fist. Lyra, he screams, the wind tearing the name from his throat. I do not need eyes to see. I know this scent. It belongs to a ghost. He remains kneeling on the pavement, completely alone in the dark. Desperation soon replaced the shock. If the scent belonged to a ghost, Silas needed a living man to help him hunt it down. Marcus pushes a heavy manila folder across his messy office desk. The paper slides violently against the wood. Silas hears the rough sound. "I ran the cellular number you gave me, Silas," Marcus says. The former police detective sounds incredibly tired. "It is a ghost." "What does that mean, Marcus?" Silas asks. He grips the edge of the desk tightly. "The telecommunications company has no active record of it," Marcus explains carefully. "It is a dead line. It was permanently disconnected exactly 3 years ago." "Who was the last registered owner?" Silas demands. His pulse accelerates rapidly. Marcus exhales a heavy cloud of cheap cigar smoke. "It belonged to Sarah, your dead fiancée. Silas, someone is playing a very sick psychological game with your mind." Silas feels the warm blood drain entirely from his face. The dark room spins violently around him. It is completely impossible. He answered that exact number. He spoke to the voice. Late that night, his private cell phone rings again. Silas answers it with violently trembling hands. "Are you actively looking for me, Silas?" Lyra whispers through the speaker. "How are you calling from a dead line?" Silas demands fiercely. "What kind of sick trick is this?" Lyra does not answer his question. Instead, she begins to read aloud. October 14. The house is completely quiet. I keep waiting to hear her footsteps on the wooden stairs, but there is only the sound of my own shallow breathing. Silas freezes completely in his chair. His stomach drops violently. "Stop," Silas gasps. December 2. Lyra continues smoothly. "I tried to write a new song today, but my hands only remember the shape of her face. That is my private journal," Silas says. His voice shakes uncontrollably. He keeps it securely locked inside his desk drawer. "You were inside my house. I am always near you," Lyra whispers before disconnecting. The next evening, the K-Night radio studio feels exactly like a suffocating prison. Silas is broadcasting live on the air. Thousands of people across Seattle are actively listening to the midnight show. Line 4 blinks bright red. Silas hesitates for a fraction of a second. He pushes the audio fader up. "You are on the air," Silas says heavily. "The city is listening carefully tonight," Lyra says. Her voice is perfectly amplified. It echoes through thousands of car radios and lonely bedrooms. "Hang up the phone." "Lyra," Silas warns her. His hand hovers directly over the emergency kill switch. "They need to know the absolute truth," she says calmly. "You need to know the truth. I am not a ghost, Silas. I am a completely real person, and I am entirely broken. What do you want from me?" Silas asks desperately into the microphone. "I want to confess," Lyra announces. The surgical chill in her voice vanishes completely. It is instantly replaced by raw, bleeding agony. The entire radio studio falls dead silent. "Silas," Lyra says, her voice breaking audibly on the live broadcast. "I took your eyes. I took her life. I am the driver from that fatal crash on Interstate Num." Silas completely stops breathing. The horrific revelation hits him like a physical blow to his chest. "And now," Lyra cries softly, "I am giving you my bleeding heart." Silas collapses forward. His forehead hits the hard plastic of the audio console. The sensitive microphone perfectly picks up the ragged, terrible sound of his sudden sobbing. He is completely broken, live on the air. He realizes she is not a supernatural phantom. She is a living entity, entirely consumed by suffocating guilt and a twisted, desperate love. "Where are you?" Silas begs the empty air. "Do not search for me using cold, hard facts," Lyra whispers. Her final words echo deeply into the dark Seattle night. "Find me through the exact pain you have fallen in love with." The line goes permanently dead. The broadcast ended in a haunting silence, but for Silas, the search for the woman behind the voice had only just become a crusade for the truth. The Mercer Island Psychological Institute is completely silent. The high-end facility smells heavily of sharp antiseptic, expensive leather furniture, and sterile paperwork. It is a place specifically designed to hide ugly secrets behind beautiful, soundproof walls. Marcus had finally traced the digital footprint of the final broadcast call. He did not find a ghost. He found a physical address. Now, Silas walks slowly down the long, empty corridor of the clinic. His white cane sweeps rhythmically across the polished marble floor. Every tap echoes violently against the clean walls. He stops. He is standing directly outside room number 402. Silas reaches out his trembling hand. His fingers find the cold brass nameplate mounted securely on the heavy oak door. He traces the raised braille dots slowly. Dr. Lyra Vance, clinical psychologist. The horrific revelation stops his heart completely. It is his therapist, the woman who has sat across from him for 2 entire years, the woman who painstakingly guided him through his severe depression, his night terrors, and his overwhelming survivor's guilt. Silas turns the cold metal doorknob. The door clicks open smoothly. He steps into the quiet office. He hears the familiar rhythmic ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. He smells the faint, terrifying scent hiding beneath the sharp smell of medical alcohol and fresh lilies. "You are not scheduled for an appointment today, Silas," a voice says from behind the large mahogany desk. It is the warm, incredibly professional tone of Dr. Vance. It is the voice that has comforted him through countless panic attacks. It is the voice he trusted with his most vulnerable secrets. Silas closes the heavy wooden door behind him. The lock clicks loudly in the quiet room. "Drop the professional voice," Silas commands. His tone is completely dead. A heavy, agonizing silence fills the spacious office. He can hear her breathing change. The measured, clinical breaths become ragged and incredibly fast. Then, she sighs. The warm, comforting tone vanishes entirely. It drops instantly into a cold, surgical chill. "You found me," she whispers. It is the exact voice from the midnight radio broadcasts. The 2 distinct identities violently merge inside his mind. The terrifying reality crashes down heavily upon his shoulders. "You," Silas gasps, stumbling backward against the solid oak door. "You are my doctor, and you are the driver." "Yes," Lyra answers simply. She does not attempt to deny it. "You killed Sarah!" Silas shouts. His loud voice violently shatters the sterile quiet of the medical clinic. "You destroyed my eyes. You left me to die in that twisted metal. How are you sitting in a luxury office instead of a prison cell?" "My family possesses incredible wealth, Silas," Lyra explains. Her voice trembles with heavy, suffocating guilt. "They paid the best defense lawyers. They buried the forensic evidence. They kept me completely out of the criminal courtroom. But they could not keep me out of my own psychological hell." Silas grips his white cane like a weapon. He is trembling with absolute, unfiltered rage. "So you became my therapist?" Silas demands fiercely. "You sat across from me for 2 years, taking detailed notes while listening to me cry about the woman you murdered. I had to save your life," Lyra cries softly. He hears her footsteps moving closer to him. "The guilt was destroying my mind completely. I studied trauma. I built my entire medical career just to fix the man I broke." "You are not blind," Silas realizes suddenly. The final piece of the twisted puzzle falls perfectly into place. The macular degeneration, the failing eyes, the fear of the dark. It was all a complete lie. I had to know what your darkness felt like. Lyra pleads desperately. "I needed to understand your physical isolation. I wore a blindfold in my own home for weeks. The radio show was my only way to confess my horrific sins without losing you forever." "You do not love me," Silas snarls, turning his face away from the sound of her voice. "You only love your own sick, twisted redemption." "That is not true," Lyra says. Her voice is desperate, raw, and completely shattered. She stops just a few inches away from him. Silas can feel the desperate heat radiating from her body. He can smell the terrifying mixture of cold rain and Sarah's perfume on her skin. "I did not act to deceive you, Silas," Lyra whispers fiercely. Heavy tears completely choke her words. I built a cage for both of us, so I could earn the right to love you again from the ruins. Silas raises his hand, gesturing blindly into the empty space between them. There is absolutely no love in this room, Silas says coldly. There is only a murderer and her blind victim. He turns around. He reaches blindly for the brass door handle, completely suffocating in the twisted, terrifying reality she has carefully constructed around him. He didn't need eyes to feel her absence as she fled the room. He followed the sound of her panic, higher and higher, toward the only place where the air was thin enough to breathe or to stop breathing. The heavy metal door of the K-Night building rooftop slams open violently. The freezing Seattle wind howls across the concrete. It rips the heavy door straight from Silas's hand. The relentless rain strikes his face like cold needles. He stands completely alone at the threshold. He has no white cane. He has no visual guide. He relies entirely on the desperate rhythm of his pounding heart and the acute sensitivity of his ears. "Lyra!" Silas shouts. The roaring storm instantly swallows his loud voice. He stands perfectly still. He listens fiercely. Beneath the chaotic noise of the heavy rain and the roaring city traffic, he finally hears it. It is a sharp, agonizing sound. It is the distinct crunch of leather high heels grinding against the loose gravel of the roof. The sound is coming from his far left. It is coming directly from the absolute edge of the concrete ledge. "Do not come any closer, Silas." Lyra screams over the violent wind. Her voice is completely shattered. It is empty of all hope. "I am ending the lie tonight. Step back from the edge," Silas demands. He steps onto the wet gravel. He moves blindly forward, his empty hands reaching out into the freezing void. "I cannot fix what I destroyed," Lyra cries. Her voice sounds dangerously hollow. "I killed Sarah. I took your light, and now I have poisoned the only sanctuary you had left. The only way to pay for a broken life is with my own life." Silas hears the wet gravel shift sharply. She is shifting her physical weight. She is preparing to step forward into the terrifying emptiness of the Seattle night. A massive surge of adrenaline explodes inside his chest. Silas lunges violently forward into the dark. He does not care if he misjudges the distance. He does not care if he falls. He reaches out blindly with both hands. His cold fingers violently grab the wet fabric of her heavy winter coat. He pulls backward with every ounce of his physical strength. Lyra screams as she falls backward onto the rough gravel. Silas collapses right beside her. His hands frantically search for her shoulders in the dark. He pins her down securely against the cold, wet roof. "Let me go!" Lyra sobs violently. She struggles desperately beneath his heavy grip. "You are supposed to hate me. I am the monster hiding in your dark room." Silas breathes heavily. His mind is a terrifying battlefield. A raging war tears his soul completely apart. Half of his broken heart screams for violent vengeance. She is the careless, drunk driver who slaughtered his entire future. But the other half of his heart remembers the late-night phone calls. It remembers the patient woman who carefully pulled him out of absolute suicidal depression. "Look at me," Silas commands fiercely. His deep voice cuts sharply through the roaring storm. Lyra stops struggling. She lies on the wet gravel, trembling uncontrollably beneath his hands. "Look at my face, Lyra," Silas demands. He leans down closer. He forces her to look directly into his sightless, ruined eyes. "Look at the permanent devastation you caused. Do not turn your face away from it." He feels her warm tears mixing with the freezing rain falling on his cold hands. "I am so sorry," Lyra whispers brokenly. "I am so sorry, Silas." "My eyes have closed forever," Silas says softly. His voice is raw with undeniable, bleeding agony. "But my heart is seeing the absolute truth for the first time." He slowly loosens his violent grip on her shoulders. He slides his freezing hands down to hold her trembling fingers. "Lyra," Silas whispers into the dark, violent storm. "Are you really going to kill the only person left alive inside of me?" Lyra lets out a shattered, agonizing cry. She wraps her arms tightly around his neck. She buries her wet face deeply into his chest. Silas holds her tightly on the cold gravel. The storm rages violently around them, but the terrifying drop into the abyss is finally over. 18 months later, the heavy Seattle rain is replaced by the relentless, rhythmic crashing of the Pacific Ocean. A small wooden house sits quietly on the rugged edge of the west coast. The salty ocean breeze sweeps constantly across the front porch. Silas sits in a weathered rocking chair. He does not hide in the suffocating darkness anymore. The warm afternoon sun rests gently on his scarred face. His phone lies on his lap. A synthetic, automated voice reads an email aloud. It is a digital transcription of a handwritten letter sent from a state correctional facility. Lyra turned herself in that very night. She fully accepted the cold, hard judgment of the law. She did not use her family's incredible wealth to run away from her sins. Every single day, Silas waits patiently for these transcribed letters. He continues to host his midnight radio show from a small home studio, but he no longer searches for angry ghosts. The broadcast is different now. It is about quiet healing. It is about surviving the wreckage and learning to live with the deep, permanent scars. The automated voice finishes the final sentence. The phone goes completely silent. Silas listens to the roaring waves. Then, he catches a completely different frequency. It is the faint, distinct crunch of tires on the distant gravel road. A vehicle stops. A heavy engine cuts off. Silas stops rocking his chair. He tilts his head slightly toward the front yard. He focuses his acute hearing. He hears the slow, incredibly hesitant sound of footsteps walking up his gravel driveway. It is the familiar click of leather boots against the stone path. He hears her breathing. It is rapid. It is nervous. He can almost hear the frantic, terrified beating of her heart as she slowly approaches the wooden stairs. Silas does not stand up. He does not frantically reach his hands out into the empty air. Instead, a slow, peaceful smile spreads across his face. The wooden stairs creak softly under her weight. Lyra steps onto the front porch. She stops completely. The space between them is heavy, but it is no longer suffocating. It is quiet. It is completely honest. She sits down slowly on the wooden floorboards, right next to his rocking chair. They do not share a passionate, dramatic embrace. They do not cry loudly into each other's arms. They simply sit together in the cool ocean breeze. True forgiveness is not a magical eraser. It does not fix the broken bones. It does not restore lost sight. Forgiveness is simply choosing to sit quietly beside the person who hurt you and listening to the ocean together. Silas leans back in his chair. He listens to her steady breathing. The terrifying storm inside his mind is finally over. "Hello," Silas says softly. His rich baritone blends perfectly with the crashing waves. "The most loyal listener of my life." Lyra lets out a soft, trembling breath. "I am here, Silas," she whispers. Her voice is finally free of the heavy, crushing guilt. Silas smiles into the warm coastal wind. "Tell me, Lyra," Silas asks quietly, "what color is the sky today?" The darkest storms often leave the deepest scars, but they also clear the air. Forgiveness isn't a magical eraser that wipes away the past. It doesn't fix what was broken. Sometimes, it is simply the quiet courage to sit beside the person who hurt you and choose to listen to the ocean together. Life is rarely painted in absolute black and white. We are all navigating the complicated, heavy gray areas in between. If Silas and Lyra's journey made you pause today, or if it made you question where the line between guilt and grace truly lies, share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know, would you have stayed on that porch? Thank you for walking through the storm with us. If you appreciate stories that explore the deep, unfiltered, and beautiful reality of the human experience, please subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Until next time, keep listening to the echoes